Aristocrats is a classic commander archetype. According to EDH Rec, this is the 7th most popular theme. Generally speaking, this is a deck that uses sacrifice outlets to sacrifice your own creatures for value. There are a few flavors and variants among those. Sometimes an Aristocrats deck can be focused on tokens, combos, or creature utility. But I do want to separate this out from a Reanimator deck. A Reanimator list is usually aiming to cheat on mana costs with spells that yoink creatures out from the graveyard. And you want to win with the power of a normally high cost creature which you've got out for cheap. Aristocrats is also about killing your own creatures and bringing them back from the dead, but it's usually more about smaller utility creatures and getting value from their death. A quantity over quality type situation. But don't get it twisted, Aristocrats decks are still great. And I'll get into that a bit more after. Okay, so if you want to build an Aristocrats deck, what colors are most commonly used? Easily, it's black. Although there are some good sacrifice outlets and payoffs in colorless, black really just has the best ones, and the best utility cards that work with an Aristocrats theme. Now, when building an Aristocrats deck, you're going to need 3 key ingredients: fodder to sacrifice, a sacrifice outlet, and a payoff for doing the actual sacrificing. How your deck utilizes these key ingredients will heavily change how your deck plays and how powerful it is. Fodder can come in many forms. The most simple type of fodder is tokens. They're easy to make in large quantities and gives you plenty of bodies that you can sacrifice. Additionally, you can play recursive creatures. Things like Bloodghast or the new Forsaken Miner are great as sacrifice fodder. Additionally, creatures with death triggers like Etsushi the Blazing Sky or Arena Rector work as great sacrifice fodder, since they already have the payoff built in, allowing you to get value from these guys even if you don't have that 3rd ingredient. Let's skip to payoffs real quick. These can come in many forms. They can be removal like Butcher of Malakir, or damage like a Blood Artist, or other utility like Pattern of Rebirth. Your payoffs will shape how the deck operates. If you have more of the Grave Pact and Butcher type effects, your deck will feel more control oriented. If you have more pinging type effects, your list might be a little bit more aggressive in terms of its damage dealing. Deciding to focus your payoffs one way or another will change where your deck lies on the control aggro spectrum. Though I would almost always recommend having some mix of both in the average casual EDH deck, since in most casual games you're probably going to need some amount of damage or utility. Sacrifice outlets are easily the biggest determinant when it comes to the power of your deck. There is an absolute canyon of difference between free sac outlets and ones that cost mana. There are great sacrifice outlets that cost mana. Evolutionary Leap and Shivan Harvest are some of my favorites. These cards are great. Leap lets you sacrifice tokens to find real creatures. Harvest lets you get past pesky non-basic lands. But these are leagues behind almost any free sacrifice outlet. And the ones that produce mana, like the Altars or the new Warren Soul Trader, are easily the most powerful. Not only does this let you sacrifice anything whenever, which is a crazy powerful tool, but it also leads to a lot of combos. Which leads me to the next section, combos. I think whether or not your deck has infinite combos will also heavily shape the list. With free sac outlets and a payoff, you suddenly become 1 or 2 cards away from a ton of different infinite combos. And because of how a lot of these combos operate, they can be pretty resilient. Yes, many of them may need 3 or 4 pieces to actually combo off, but the sac outlets and payoffs are relatively interchangeable. If they kill your Blood Artist, that's fine. You can play a Zulaport Cutthroat or any other payoff and your combo will still probably work. There is nothing wrong with wanting to build your deck as a combo list. But it does mean that your sac outlets and payoffs will be magnets for removal, since any 2 of those in play means your opponents are potentially 1 or 2 cards away from losing. If you're not going the combo route, I would make that very clear at the start of the game, so your opponents aren't focusing your things as hard. To avoid combos, not having mana generating payoffs or outlets is usually the best way to do so. Or if you really want to slow your deck down, not having any free sac outlets makes your deck trend to the lower brackets for sure. Now, normally with these deck building guides, I usually try and stay positive, but I've actually been avoiding Aristocrats because I don't like these decks very much. I feel like once you've seen one, you've kind of seen them all. They have a high amount of similar cards in the 99, run a lot of the same combos, and seemingly have similar play patterns to one another. But this is what my patrons voted for, so I decided to bring in an expert.
Hello, I'm 33 Elk. You probably already know me if you watch con stuff. Okay, anyway, I love aristocrats. I've always had at least one assembled as one of my decks for years now. And while it is true that the archetype does run a lot of the same cards, this is literally out of necessity just because Wizards is scared of the power of giving us too many truly free sacrifice outlets. So we're kinda stuck with the classics before they learned their lesson. Ultimately, aristocrats is only boring if you let it be. I highly recommend the archetype for anyone who likes constructing multi-card engines, because aristocrats isn't really defined by any individual card in the deck, but by their synergies in play. You need A, a sack outlet, B, fodder, and C, payoff. Your deck building needs to be on point to maximize your chances of finding one of each type of card and not piling up on multiple sets of outlets or fodder. Regardless, Aristocrats is a deck about ratios and the relationship between cards, rather than individual cards. Some of my favorite play patterns from Aristocrats, in case I haven't sold you on the archetype yet, are Forsaken Miner and Goblin Bombardment. That's a black fireball with buyback 0. Prowling Geistcatcher and Living Death allow you to eat all your cardboard in front of your opponents without fear, and are legitimately strong enough plays in decks like these, where you could completely go combo free with them. With a sack outlet in play, suddenly Seize the Spotlight is 0 mana draw 3. What's wrong, opponents? Don't want to let me eat your prized little buddies? That's cute. And don't get me started on Sawblade Skinripper coming back off a Living Death or something and doming an opponent for 20 or something stupid. My personal recommendation for Aristocrats is Judith the Scourge Diva. Firstly, she's really hot, but secondly, she has a lot of fun play patterns that break the mold of traditional aristocrats. She commits crimes, makes you find a way to get around her non-token restriction, deals damage so she can work with cards like Grievous Wound, and can also point that damage anywhere so Death Touch pinging control is an option. And even her Lord effect shouldn't be downplayed, as it can buff the powers of creatures like Alesha, who laughs at fate, and Gleeful Arsonist, while just also boosting your combat. Speaking of wizards like Gleeful Arsonist, Judith gets double pings off Harmonic Prodigy as well, which is quite hilarious. Overall, just a lot of play with this commander. If you like the sound of her, I have a video going through my build of her.
I'll throw in a couple of other unconventional commander options for you to check out. I used to play a list with Zhaodun the One-Eyed as my commander. He works really well with returning stuff from the yard, can get back a lot of your key pieces, and his sacrifice ability works with your payoffs. Another great commander option is Gut True Zealot. She makes fodder, sacrifices things, plus with backgrounds, you can add any color you want. So how strong is an Aristocrats deck overall? Honestly, it will depend a lot on those sacrifice outlets. If you have all of the strong ones and good ways to use them, then yeah, your list will feel pretty powerful. And if you're playing a lot of the best combo lines with ways to find them like tutors and efficient card draw, you can easily make an Aristocrats deck that will land in bracket 4. But if you cut the combos, free sack outlets, and mana generating sack outlets, then your deck is likely closer to a 2 or 3, which is a great benefit for Aristocrats decks. You can tailor it for almost any playgroup. I do think Aristocrats decks do get a small boost in power compared to other archetypes because a lot of players don't run a huge amount of graveyard hate, which normally would be strong against these decks, but you kind of get to skip past that since most people just don't run any. Okay, so how much is an Aristocrats deck going to cost you? To build a lower power Aristocrats list, you can easily make one on a budget. Other than the absolute best in class cards, there are a lot of free sack outlets, good payoffs, and fodder that are cheap. Viscera Seer, Reassembling Skeleton, and Morbid Opportunist are all under $1, and they're all pretty good options for an Aristocrats deck. If you want to run some of the more powerful sack outlets, those will cost you, and they're also harder to replace. There isn't another card with the same combo potential as Astronaut's Altar. This is for sure a deck you can spend a lot of time and money on upgrading it though. It's really easy to build most of your Aristocrats deck, and over time, if you want to power it up, you slowly swap in the higher power sack outlets, and it'll speed up your deck by a huge amount. Aristocrats is one of the most popular non-combat damage oriented decks in Commander, and for good reason. Like I said, personally, I think the lists are a bit samey for me, but just like Elk said, it's about layering synergies together and building an engine that's more than the sum of its parts. If you like a synergy-focused machine of a deck with a lot of moving parts, then sacrificing, looping, and moving around cards in and out of the graveyard might be right for you, and maybe you'll want an Aristocrats deck. I hope this video helped you build an Aristocrats deck. If it did, please tell me your commander choice in the comments below. Also, real quick, second channel, check it out. First video should be out by the end of the month. Special thanks to my patrons who make these videos possible. If you want to be in the credits, or check out any other perks like voting on the subject for these videos, check the link in the description below.